Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to today's Postgrad webinar session. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by the University of Aberdeen, who are going to be talking to us about their PhD and research opportunities, which is a very rare occurrence these days. We very rarely hear just solely about PhDs and research opportunities. So really exciting, real great opportunity for all students around the world to find out how they can enhance their studies, find out a little bit more, and obviously find out a little bit what's going to happen in the future as well. So if you have any questions, if you have anything related to this session at all, whether it be concerns or you're not sure about a current application, we have got a chat facility there. Please do avoid putting any personal information in there. We will have to delete that information, but we can reach out to you afterwards. We do have your details, and we promise we'll reach out to you with the video. And if you have more questions, you can communicate with us. There is also a Q&A box on there for which I'll come back on towards the end of today's panel discussion, and we'll ask any questions that a student has asked. It might be that the question is engaging enough to make the actual panel discussion. So please pop your questions in that Q&A box. It's imperative that you put it in there, not just in the chat. If you have any kind of post-on-demand questions, webinars at postgradsolutions.com is the best place to do so. And if you have any questions around social media, please pop it in the chat facility also. But for now, I'd like to hand you over to Kat. She'll be taking you through the next 2-3 minutes, introducing you through to our colleagues. And I'll be back for the panel discussion at the end. Don't forget to put your notes in the chat and the Q&A. Over to you.
Gareth, and yeah, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope your day is going well wherever you're joining us from. We're joining you from sunny campus in Aberdeen. If you hear any background noise, it's probably coming from our graduation ceremonies, which started today. You might hear some cheering, maybe even some bagpipes in the background. So yeah, it's a joyful day here on campus in Aberdeen this morning. My name's Kat, and I am a Global Partnerships and Recruitment Manager here at the University of Aberdeen, and I'm going to be your panel host today. So again, thank you so much for joining us. While we let people log in and join the session, I'll just give you a bit of background on what we expect from the session today. So really the webinar today is aiming to help any prospective PhD applicants understand how to identify the right research project, supervisor, and research environment for your prospective doctoral studies. The session will also showcase the opportunities and support that we have available to postgraduate researchers here at the University of Aberdeen, and we'll also be providing you some practical advice and tips on how to make a strong PhD application. In terms of the format of the session itself, it's going to be quite an interactive session. So you're not going to be sitting through lots of slides or one person directing the whole session. We have a panel of experts here who I will hand to introduce themselves in just a moment. I'm going to be directing some questions that we think you might find helpful to them for the first part of the session, and then we will open it up to the floor for a Q&A. So please feel free throughout the session or at the end, just as things come to mind, to pop your questions in the chat box, and we will try to get to as many as we possibly can. If anything's not clear while we go through as well, or you need some further discussion, again, please feel free to put any comments in the chat box there. So I'm going to hand over to our panelists now and just ask them to give a quick introduction about themselves and their role here at the University of Aberdeen. So if we could start off with Stuart, please, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Kat, and good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone online, depending on where you are in the world. So my name is Stuart Piertney, and I'm the University of Aberdeen's Dean for Postgraduate Research. And so that means it's my job to ensure that we nurture and we maintain a research and training culture and environment for our students that means they can really flourish and deliver on a really outstanding PhD experience. Thanks, Kat.
Thank you very much. Ben.
Thanks, Kat. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. My name's Ben Hurd. I work in the Postgraduate Research College. We've got quite a broad remit, but essentially my role is in the studentships team. We work right from advertising through to primarily to enrolling a student and beyond. So your initial inquiry, your application, any inquiries or queries you might have about studying with us, that would all come via the team that I work in. So happy to answer any questions as we go.
Great. Thank you, Ben. And Sean.
Hi all, and thank you. My name's Sean Graham. I'm a third year PhD student here at Aberdeen. My research, in a nutshell, focused on the interface between roots and soil in really old barley. I have a few other roles within university, and maybe I'll get the privilege to go into that a little bit later on in the Q&A session.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sean. Okay, so our first topic of discussion is going to be around finding the right PhD project for you. And our lead panelist is going to be Stuart on this topic. So if I could please come to you first, Stuart, and ask, in terms of PhD applicants, should they start by focusing on a specific PhD project, or should they begin with kind of a broader interest that they then go on to narrow down?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question to really hammer out at the beginning here. But I think it's perhaps worth just prefacing my answer just by highlighting how different the PhD experience is from what you students might experience either the undergraduate or the postgraduate taught level. If you think about what we do when you're an undergraduate student or you're a postgraduate taught student, is you're trying to demonstrate that you've understood all of the material that your lecturers and your professors have actually provided. But a PhD experience is very different, because a PhD, you're then creating your own new knowledge and understanding. So we're really sort of exploring new areas within a research field that no one has ever trod before. And that's an amazingly rewarding and enriching experience, but it's also quite challenging. So you've got to think, you've got 3 or 4 years to focus on something that you are interested in, you are passionate about, and you're willing to invest all of your exertion, all of your energy towards that end. So it really, really is important that you identify the area that you are most interested in and you're passionate about because of that investment. You know, what we see is a few students just see a PhD opportunity as a natural progression of their undergraduate degree and their undergraduate experience. And that's perhaps sort of missing what the point is a little bit, and means they don't think about the proper aspects when they're choosing their PhD. So the first port of call is, what is it that I am interested in? What is it that I am passionate about? And then you start to think, okay, if that's what I want to do, I need to identify the right opportunity for me. And that opportunity is all about having that research environment and that research experience that helps you really get where you need to get and make the most of that experience. So part of it is identifying the right project, but that also might be within the right area and the right supervisor. We can talk a little bit more about that at the moment, a little bit later on. But I think depending on whether you're from an arts and humanities background or whether you're from a science and engineering background, there are perhaps different routes into a PhD. And in some cases, you may well find that there's a specific project being offered. Yeah, and in some cases, it's just we're looking to recruit PhD students in a particular disciplinary area. And obviously, what that opportunity is may well dictate ultimately what your final destination is. But I think to actually get around to answering your question there, Kat, you need to identify that discipline, that area that you're madly passionate about, because you're going to be investing 4 years of your life in that particular area. And so that discipline in that area is massively important. And then you think, where is the best place to actually do that? Where would I get the best support in terms of a PhD supervisor and also a research group that allows me to bat ideas back and forth and make sure that I really am ticking that box in terms of generating that new knowledge and that new understanding.
Thank you, Stuart. That was really helpful. So yeah, students are kind of finding that passion first of all, and then maybe drilling down into where might have a research group that kind of services that, and then they can maybe get a bit more specific. So kind of on that note, in terms of if they've done that initial scoping exercise, when it comes to actually looking at potential research projects, what are the kind of key things that they should be looking for when they're evaluating different potential projects?
Yeah. So I think it is really important that you have the environment that allows you to really flourish. And a lot of that environment comes from your supervisor and the research group and the research team that they already lead. So if you are going to invest your efforts in a particular area, you want to make sure that you're supported as well as possible. So obviously choosing your PhD supervisor is massively important from that perspective, because it's your PhD supervisor who will be not only guiding you on a day-to-day basis, in terms of the direction of travel of the research, and then considering about whether it's actually achieving what you wanted to achieve. They also become your mentor, and they also become the person that helps you develop as a broader researcher, and perhaps helps support that sort of core and generic skills training on top of that specific project. That means that upon graduation, you are that much more competitive for a whole diversity, a whole range of different career endpoints. So identifying a good PhD supervisor working in a very vibrant research environment, I think, to me, is absolutely key.
Great, thank you. And just kind of lastly on the project piece, how can students identify whether a project is realistically achievable or suitable for a PhD?
Okay, so again, it comes down a little bit to whether that project is a well-defined project or it's just within a disciplinary area. Now, we would expect that in a lot of cases when a specific project is being offered, that's already gone through that process of making sure it, on the one hand, does generate that new knowledge and understanding that is key to actually getting a PhD. But the counter side to that, it is actually a realistic proposition within 3 or 4 years. Now, it's worth highlighting there that just because a project may well be specified, it doesn't mean that the student can't take it in a particular direction they may find interesting. And what's the role of the PhD supervisor, just to make sure that things are just kept on track. So yes, you can start exploring new areas and new opportunities, but maybe every now and again, your supervisor may rein in your ambition slightly, because even though 3 or 4 years might seem a long time, when you are developing new knowledge and new understanding, it can go really, really quickly. And then for those projects just within a disciplinary area, then I think the PhD supervisor and the PhD student will co-create and work hand in hand to sort of define what the project is all about and make sure it is really achievable within that time period of a PhD.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So, Sean, coming over to you now from the student perspective, can you tell us a little bit about what attracted you to your current research project, please?
Yeah, of course. And also, I think it's great that Stuart gave us an introduction to that, because he's really touched on a lot of points that I actually myself wanted to talk about. So, so I have a background in industry. So I didn't actually do a master's degree. I went straight from my undergrad into working in arboricultural research. So working in the urban environment, working with trees. So my PhD is in plant-soil interactions. And when I was working for this company, I became really interested in how plants and trees could change the soil and improve our urban environments without adding too much human input and disturbing the ecosystem. And so what I did is I wanted to choose a topic, a PhD, to learn more about this subject. So I went out and I searched for projects on various websites and searched the internet. And so I guess to touch on your question, what drew me to my project, I found that my project in Aberdeen was something that already aligned with my interests. So unlike in other like other courses, like undergrad and master's courses, it's very much I want to learn this information. With my project, the description was sustainable soils for like the future of agriculture, and I saw that this was an environment where I could really develop my skills as a researcher and ask questions that I thought were interesting for myself, but also I thought were really important for the future of research in agriculture. So yeah, what attracted me to this project was I could see myself enjoying it, and I felt like I fit really well into that. And then I think as a sort of an add-on point, I think it's really important to like have a conversation with your supervisors too about it. I guess something that I think is quite different from my perspective between research as a PhD and as potentially having a job as like applying for a job in the market is that I found like it's very much a conversation. Like I applied for 2 PhDs in both opportunities, both occasions. I actually had a conversation with the supervisory team and said, "Hey, look, this is what I am interested in. This is me. This is what I want to take the project." And we had some email conversations with it. And actually, my supervisor, the primary supervisor, was like, "Actually, Sean, I think you're a good fit for this project. Like, you should apply for it, and we'll go through the process and see if you're the best candidate." So actually, yeah, it was a two-way street for myself.
Great. I think that's really helpful about that kind of back and forth relationship that you will hopefully establish with your supervisor throughout your studies as well. Starts from the very beginning, really. Um, that's great. Thank you, Sean. And could you tell us a little bit as well about how your project evolved after you actually started your research and what that looked like for you?
Yeah, of course. So I think that my project evolved quite organically. So, and what I mean by that is that I have a very defined route in my head. Like I knew what I wanted to achieve. I knew where I wanted my research to go. I'd done a lot of reading in the first beginning period of my PhD, so I knew a little bit about the literature, and so I had this plan. But what I found is that in research, there's what you want to do, and then what is actually practical and what is possible with the resources and the time and the expertise. And just for myself too, like what can I achieve? And like I said, that back and forth between myself and the supervisory team, I led with what can I achieve in the time frame and what is practical for my expertise. And so that's in a way my project led that. And for my own personal experiences, like my project was very open-ended. There was a huge amount of scope. I know other projects, other PhDs have a little bit more defined route, completely student-led, but a little bit more defined. And so what I found myself doing was leading with where my project went. So, for example, in my early days, I did a series of growth cabinet experiments and some greenhouse experiments. And what I found was that the research was saying that maybe there's something interesting going on over here, whereas beforehand I wanted to be more over in another direction. And so by following the research, by following what I think was interesting, I found myself in quite a different place to what I expected. Which I'm really happy with because I've, in a way, followed my interest and my research is evolving to be very impactful, which is really good. But yeah, so I'd say natural evolution overall is kind of where my project went.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. So if there's any follow-up questions on sort of about the project and assessing the right project for you, again, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box and we will come to them in the end. So just moving on to a little bit more about finding a supervisor and a research group, just to go into a bit more detail there. I'm going to ask if we can come back to Stuart and talk a little bit about how should prospective students assess potential supervisors before applying, and what kind of questions should applicants be asking their supervisors to kind of establish that first discussion.
Yeah, and again, it's just really reinforcing that the success of a PhD experience really does come down to that interrelationship between the student and the supervisor. So from a student's perspective, you really want to make sure that you're choosing the right supervisor. And that's not just about having a supervisor who's an expert within the field that you're interested in. It's also about somebody who you can interact with and converse with over a 3 to 4 year period. So I think part of that, it's almost the easy part, is to identify whether an individual is an expert within their field. You can get that by their publication record and the number of PhD students they've got, and this, that, and the other. What's more important is how you will interact with them and their ways of working relative to your ways of working over that period of time. Now, when we start thinking about PhD applications and that application process, there is a obvious requirement to have those sort of conversations along the way in terms of supporting the application. But I would really encourage students to try and interact with their potential supervisors as much as possible, just to work out what they are like, what are their ways of working, and whether that's compatible with your own ways of working. Because some supervisors can be very hands-off, And that means if you're a very independent student, that's absolutely fine. Some supervisors are very hands-on. And again, for some students, that's exactly what they're looking for. And so making sure that there is that compatibility between a supervisor's way of working and your way of working is really, really important. And also thinking about how you communicate and interact. It's a challenging thing to do a PhD, and you will be challenged as a student along the way. And some people have got different styles in terms of how they interact and how they respond and how they communicate. And you just want to make sure that if you are going to develop that rapport, that relationship with your supervisor, that it's heading and supporting you in that sort of direction that you want to take it on. So again, I think that to me is key, is to make sure that you can actually work with your supervisor in a very productive, constructive, but then sometimes quite critical and challenging way over that period to get you where you need to get to.
Great, thank you very much. And just coming to you, Sean, from the student perspective, have you got any kind of practical advice you can give students when contacting potential supervisors, when reaching out to them?
Yes, yeah, I have quite a bit, but I'll try and keep it condensed. I think probably one of the main points is that, like we've been saying throughout, it's important that the fit is right. It's for yourself. You need to belong and feel like you're part of the team. So like it has to be the right fit for you. So you need to be yourself. I think it's really good to reach out to your supervisors before making applications, because then it helps, because you already have that personal rapport. You've had some contact that shows the supervisory team that you are really interested in it. You're not just sending out applications to lots of things. Like, this is what you want. You are investing in this project. Also, I think it's a really good idea to do some research into the team, because it is a team, and just see what research has been recently been published, what society committees and involvements that your team has, not necessarily to sort of tell them about themselves, but just so you have an idea of like, hi, I've read your recent paper about this project that you're working on, and this really aligns with my interests, and I wonder how this would fit with this project that I see advertising. Could you provide some more information about this project? And a lot of the time that the supervisor team will work with you and may not be able to help you with the application, but to work with you so that you understand it completely, and just build that rapport up. But yeah, don't be shy, like reach out, be yourself.
Great, thank you very much. That's always good advice, isn't it? Just reach out and be yourself. And that personal relationship is going to be an important one as well, kind of as Stuart touched on, whether your kind of personalities and your ways of working align is actually a big part of it too. So good to bear in mind. Okay, great, thank you. So just looking forward onto kind of the wider research environment, we're going to reach to our colleague Ben. So Ben, could I ask you for kind of your take on what makes for a positive research environment? What is the research environment like at Aberdeen for PhD students?
Thanks, Kat. I actually might defer this one to Stuart, if that's okay, Stuart. I think Stuart might be in a better position to answer
Yeah,
this one than me.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Stuart.
Again, just prefacing my answer is, what you don't want as a PhD student is to be in this little silo where you don't interact with other students and other researchers. What we're trying to do, what we're trying to develop, are students who are not only an expert, a world expert by the end of their PhD in a particular area, but also a student who has got that broad understanding of where their own research fits in a larger context, and would be competitive for employment across a diversity of career directions and career endpoints. So what we try and do as much as possible is to make sure we think about teams within teams. So you have, to start with, you'll have your relationship with your supervisor, and then you'll have your relationship with your researchers within your own research group, and then you'll have relationships with other PhD students within a school. But what we try to promote is make sure that our students are talking across schools. So there's a lot of focus nowadays on what we term multi or interdisciplinarity. thinking about not just your own research, but your research in the context of other disciplines. And so a really good way to do that is to make sure that we get the students talking to each other across. So we'll have people in the arts and humanities talking about their research to students within sciences. And what we try to do within the Postgraduate Research College is take every opportunity to get those students together. So we try and maximize that community feeling. And so it's not just about you within your own school, it's also you across the university. So we have a number of different events where we bring students together, and we try to emphasize that community. And sometimes it's just in informal social events. Sometimes it's in sort of things like seminar series. But what we realize is that is almost as important as what you're doing with your own researcher, within your own research supervision and your own research team. It's making sure you understand that broader picture. And we will do what we can to try and bring people together so they can actually talk across that piece.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, that kind of having those connections with students that are going through a similar study experience to you is so important, isn't it? And kind of on that note, Sean, could you tell us a little bit about what opportunities you've had beyond your research project? What other things you've been able to get involved in while you've been here?
Yeah, for sure. So when I joined the university, I had a good chat with people in my lab group and my supervisors, and I found out that there was this opportunity, because I'm plant and soil science, to go to Italy in Sestola for a mountain soil surveying sort of training, which is really interesting because even though the landscape in Scotland is quite mountainous, the soil types are very different. As a soil scientist, it's great to have a really good understanding of different soils around the world and how it's formed, and that's really quite interesting. A good networking opportunity. I still keep in contact with some of these people. I guess a little bit further outside of research, I was able to be involved in supporting the students in university through committees called the Student Staff Liaison Committee, which in short is my role is to speak to people just as you do on a day-to-day basis, and just hear what people have to say and how they are engaging, how they're feeling, how they're doing with their research experience, and then feed that back into to staff, to the team, and then we all work together to try and make everyone's lives a little bit better, the experience better research, better research environment. I guess another part of that is that I was able to be involved with another community called SULSA. It's the Scottish University Life Science Alliance. A bit of a mouthful, but basically what it is it's an organisation that gets involved. It's between 13 universities and institutes in Scotland. I'm on the early career committee for that, and that's really nice again to feed in and get involved with lots of people. And I guess from an employability perspective, it looks good that I have experience supporting and being involved in the research environment, not just within the university, but within the culture of research. And then there are a few other points if I have some time. The university, as Stuart really well put, it's a very multidisciplinary, it's a very collaborative environment. We all receive emails and opportunities, such as the Fascination in Plants Day, which is where people go to nearby venues and we talk about plants. It's not really research related, it's more just like, I like barley, let me tell people. And this is a whole range of ages, and it's not really to a scientific environment, although you probably will meet some sciencey people in that. So really there's so many opportunities that there are at the university, far more than I ever expected. And I think this is actually something that's really good to be highlighted to prospective students, right? Like, the PhD is a lifestyle. It's very different to what I expected. I was surprised by how much there was.
And if I can just add on to the end of that, Kat, I think it's important that we don't just try to develop these professional networks in terms of you and your researchers. It's also developing sort of personal social networks, because those personal social networks can help you through lived experience or just by having an empathetic ear to understand how to make the most out of that PhD experience. So there, as well as these little professional networks that we try to nurture, there are also some social networks, and some of those are just societies associated with particular disciplines. Some cases we've got societies that are associated with particular parts of the world. So, we have 136 nations, countries represented within our PhD population at the moment, and there's an awful lot of those coming together to try and sort of share cultural experience and geographical experience. So again, that's something that we take very seriously, just to make sure that no students are feeling sort of left isolated because they've come into what would be a very foreign, very alien environment to them in the northeast of Scotland relative to where they came from around the world, because we are a very global university.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stuart. And just to close out this segment, Sean, we're coming back to you. You're in the hot seat, I'm afraid. Um, just thinking about kind of your wider career development, could you tell us a little bit about how your PhD has helped you to kind of develop as a researcher, and how that's helped to kind of prepare you for your future career, whatever path you do go down?
Yes, a really good question. And I think it at times can be a little bit difficult. Obviously, as for myself and PhDs, we have a very good idea of where we want to go in our future careers. But to be honest, when you're in the trenches of the PhD, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to put your head above and say, actually, where do I want to go? Like, what's right for myself? To be completely honest, that's something all PhDs I think can relate to. But in terms of career, like I knew that I wanted to go into a sort of a teaching, lecturing role. Is very, very competitive. So to be real, like, will I get there? We're not sure. But the point is that the university has so many opportunities to allow me to move in that direction, with demonstrating and sort of like seminar series which you can be involved in. Have the advanced further, it's called AFHEA. It's like a teaching qualification, which is free for everyone at the university. That's, I can't remember the details, but get involved with, get in contact for more information on the eligibility criteria. So myself, I was aware of that, and so along the PhD, I took opportunities, and which aligned with me, which I enjoyed. So I'll be start my teaching qualification soon. So that's kind of, these are the sort of skills I've taken on to help with my career. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So just before we move on to our Q&A segment of the webinar, I wonder if I can come to each panelist, please, and ask for one piece of advice for PhD applicants. That can be practical, that can be, kind of research-based. Just prior to studying here, what might be helpful to know? So if we could come to Ben first, please, that would be great.
Thanks, Kat. So I guess my biggest piece of advice would just be a piece of general application advice. It's either when you're contacting a school at the university or a staff member, it's to be specific, direct a staff member directly, because as I'm sure you're aware, we receive hundreds and hundreds of emails daily from students to supervisors to other admin staff, and it's often quite obvious if it's just a generic message that's been sent to lots of different people, lots of different places. So I think it really makes a big difference to the reply you get if you're specific. You address a staff member or research group specifically. I think that's quite an important thing to consider.
Yeah, that's really good practical advice. I think there's been a couple of questions around, the practicalities of reaching out to a supervisor. So I'm sure lots of our audience members will find that helpful. Thank you, Ben. And coming to Stuart next, please.
Thanks, Kat. I think my advice would be that sort of slightly higher level to what Ben just said. Sort of Ben, that's very mechanistic. Follow your passion. We highlighted at the start that a PhD takes a serious amount of investment in terms of you being a researcher, looking at one piece of one area, one sub-discipline for 3 or 4 years, generating new knowledge and understanding. So that's got to be right for you. And so as a consequence, attack the things that you are most passionate about and think about how you can then embed yourself within that environment. Talk to the potential supervisors. Think about the direction of travel of your PhD, because if you're going to invest all of, in effect, what could be sort of 3, 4, 5% of your entire life in a particular project, you want to make sure it's absolutely the one for you. And we see that an awful lot with some students, as Ben was just saying, that they throw out a sort of blanket application that I want to do a PhD. And what we're looking for from a supervisor's perspective is I want to do this PhD. And that's a very different thing, because it really does highlight your enthusiasm and your passion and the way that you'll be invested and the way that you will be rewarded for that particular part of the journey.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good life advice in general, isn't it? Follow your passion is a good starting point. And finally, Sean, please.
Yeah, I think there's very much a common theme about this advice, because my answer is kind of similar too. Actually, I think I found there was no rush to do a PhD. I really benefited from gaining life experience in an area to know what you like and what you don't like. You just have to do it to work out what it is that fits for yourself. So I'd say there's no rush. Like, make sure the project is right for you, and you're in the right place to do a PhD too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So as we look to kind of move over to our Q&A session, I've had a quick glance at the Q&A box, and I can see there's a couple of kind of common themes that have come up a few times. So I wonder if we can reach to Ben for some of these more practical elements about the application process. So I think our number one question, understandably, is around funding and scholarships. So Ben, could you talk through a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So we do offer a large number of funded opportunities at the university for PhDs. A large number of these are part of what we call doctoral training partnerships, or doctoral landscape awards, or doctoral focal awards. I'm not sure if I've missed some there, but there's you often see some acronyms like that, like DTP, DLA, DFA. They're essentially partnerships between us at the University of Aberdeen and another or multiple universities, with funding from UK Research and Innovation and the research councils which sit under them. A large part of our funded opportunities come from these, and we advertise these typically from around October to January or February in some cases, and these typically include full funding for both home and international students, and include money for research training, often money for travel and conference attendances, and a doctoral stipend as well for living costs. And I think for the current academic year, it's about £21,000 for the year. So we offer quite a number of these, and we do advertise all of these on Find a PhD. So as I'm sure people are here from Find a PhD, you'll be familiar with the site, but you can search via the University of Aberdeen. You can then further search by discipline. But then also throughout the year, I've just checked now, we've got a number advertised now of funded projects. These are PhDs and in some cases MScs. These can crop up at any time throughout the year, depending on whether a research group or a school has received funding. And typically the ones that crop up throughout the year somewhat randomly aren't often funded fully for international students. And what I mean by that is you still receive a stipend and home tuition fees, but international applicants are often advised that they can apply, but they may need to fund the difference between home and international tuition fees, which unfortunately in some cases is quite significant. So yes, but so ultimately, we do advertise a large number of funded projects throughout the year. And I'll just add there that these are more often than not predefined projects, whereby we don't typically require a research proposal. So a student applies to a project which has been defined by a research group, or it's the project's already been defined. They're just looking for a suitable student. and these are predominantly in STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and maths. But opportunities do arise in arts and humanities as well. And often in the arts and humanities, it's not quite the same. So they can be what we call student-led projects, whereby a student is required to submit a proposal. And the way these work is students will submit a proposal to a supervisor at our university, and quite often the university will nominate a project which they think has the potential to receive funding, and then this gets submitted to the research body that's funding the project. So slightly different for arts and humanities, and I would say slightly fewer opportunities available, although we do have some coming up later in the year. Sorry, that was a bit of a whistle stop tour through all of the funding, or a lot of the
No,
funding
that's great.
opportunities. But
Yeah,
happy
and
to answer any additional questions anyone may have, because it's quite a big
Yeah.
topic area.
I think one other route that we would perhaps like to flag, Kat, to everyone, I've
Mhm.
just noticed within the chat, lots of people saying hello from lots of different countries around the world. And in some cases, certain governments will have scholarship opportunities for their nationals to take those abroad. So what supervisors can sometimes do is support a student to make an application for PhD funding to their own government, and then they take those abroad, and they could bring them to Aberdeen in some cases. Now, some countries have got more opportunities than others, but I would really recommend that if a student wishes to go and leave their own country and study abroad, that this might be a route that they could explore. See what funding opportunities are available from your government, and then try and align that with a potential supervisor who will be able to support you writing an application to hopefully secure some funding.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I know, Ben, you touched on the sort of Find a PhD site as well that we have. So I'll pop that in the chat also so people can access it that way. And that sounds like a really good starting point. Um, I know that you touched upon the two different sort of avenues, whether you're applying directly to an already kind of fairly established project, or whether you're kind of reaching out to the school first of all, looking for supervisors. If the student is to kind of have a rough research proposal, first of all, is there a specific format that needs to be in? Do we have a template for that? Any tips or practical advice on that would be great, please.
So due to the nature of all the nuances of all our different schools and disciplines, faculties here, they can research proposals can vary between subjects quite often. So I think I'm not sure if any of our schools offer advice on what they're looking for in a proposal, but as we said earlier, it's a really good idea to just start early, get in contact with a supervisor early, and just see what they would like with a proposal. That's the advice we typically give. Stuart may have other advice, but that's what we would give. Get in touch with a supervisor and see what they suggest.
Yeah, I would totally echo that. And whilst our supervisors would more than welcome conversations over email, perhaps have that as an iterative conversation, one that evolves and sort of develops ideas. It can be quite a lot of effort for a student to come up with a very specific research project, to then present that to a supervisor, and they say, well, actually, that's not really where my area of expertise is. Now, what we will do is we may well try to redirect that student to somebody who might be more appropriate. But I think a really good strategy is just start a conversation with a supervisor, and then you can evolve and you can adapt and you can change and you can direct a project that we can then start thinking about how we might well fund that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's a common through line kind of in the webinar is just try and establish that connection early. Each supervisor will have a different way of doing it. There's not necessarily an exact set way that you have to do it. So, reaching out is kind of your first point of call. I think that's really good advice. Something that's come up a couple of times in the chat as well is whether we offer any kind of remote or hybrid split online taught PhDs at all, or are they all in person here on campus in Aberdeen?
We offer a large number of online or distance learning PhDs. So I'd say that I think the vast majority of our schools offer these now. Obviously, in some subjects, some projects, some disciplines, it's simply not feasible to study remotely. If you're, for example, want to study a lab-based or a lab-based or engineering project, it's probably not feasible. But certainly in the arts, humanities, it's very common to study by distance learning, and even in STEM subjects, if your project is involving more kind of data analysis rather than lab work, then yeah, most certainly a lot of our schools and supervisors are more than happy to supervise distance students. And I'll add there that if you are a distance student, you don't have to be entirely distance. You have the opportunity to attend university at points. Obviously, that's subject to UK VI visa rules, but yes, it's something we're really happy to consider if somebody's interested in studying with us remotely.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. And just again, kind of on the practicalities of the application process, are our applications for postgraduate research, are they on a rolling basis? Is there a specific timeline that students should follow in terms of getting their application in? Any advice on that?
So we accept applications year round. They don't close at all. There's not any deadlines unless you are applying for a specific funded opportunity. Many of those we do have strict deadlines on if it's particularly if it's a competitive advertised project. And each Find a PhD advert for a project will have a deadline on. But if you're not applying for a specific project, applying speculatively or for a self-funded project, then yeah, all year round, you're more than welcome to apply at any time.
Brilliant, thank you. And just lastly, on kind of that application process and requirements, and we've had a couple of questions about English language requirements and whether we accept mode of instruction in place of an IELTS, for example, where students have been studying their undergraduate or their master's degree in English. So anything on that, please, Ben?
We do accept MOIs, but only from certain institutions. I can just find the link now and put it in the chat. Actually, I'll do it in a while. But yes, so the short answer, we do accept MOIs, but only from certain institutions. But if you have a degree from majority English speaking from certain majority English speaking countries, you will not need an MOI, just a previous degree. So countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, if you have a degree from those countries, we do not require any additional language. And in terms of providers we accept, you'll be able to see when I provide the list, but there's a wide range of English language certificate providers we accept, IELTS, TOEFL, we now accept Duolingo, so it doesn't always have to be IELTS. I'll put the link in the chat so everyone can see exactly what we accept.
Great, thank you very much. And just again to reiterate for everyone, that link for Find a PhD is in the chat box. Ben is going to provide a further link around English language testing. I know there's some comments in the chat regarding kind of research areas and certain disciplines. Again, you'll find all of that information there on our website. So just encourage you to have a look, have an explore. And of course, you're always very welcome to get in touch with us directly if there's anything that's not clear. I'm going to bring our colleague Gareth back on to the call just before we close up. Before we do that, just want to give the panel an opportunity if there's anything else you want to highlight or kind of direct our students towards. Sean's shaking his head, so he's all good. Ben, Stuart, is there anything you'd like to add before we round this up?
Yeah, no, I think I would just reiterate something we've said several times through this webinar is that, we welcome PhDs, we welcome PhD student opportunities, but a lot of it is the ball is in the student's court. And so as a consequence, start talking to your potential supervisor, start looking about the opportunities for scholarships and funded positions. An awful lot of our PhD supervisors within the University of Aberdeen have a very much an open door policy. They're very engaged. They're very willing to have conversations with students. So please, please, please don't be shy in searching through our web pages, seeing which supervisors may well be aligned with your own interests and your own passions, and then just dropping them an email, even though it may well be a cold call email. If you just preface that by introducing yourself and the motivation for the email, I'm sure you'll get a response.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Gareth, I'm going to hand
Yeah,
back.
I think that's been brilliant, Kat. I think that the things we've heard there, the questions that have been asked, has been so engaging as well. If I could just ask a couple more questions, if that's okay, just elaborate a little bit further. I think it's really important to talk about, I think all three of you mentioned, in addition to Kat, the importance of passion. This has got to be something that comes from within, that you're passionate about and you love. And I think it's important to point out that can come at any stage of your career, any age as well, can't it? So we've gone through obviously the different nationalities. I think you mentioned, Stuart, earlier, the 133 or 37, I think you might have quoted earlier. But what different types of age brackets do you see within Aberdeen specifically? Because it's not just your stereotype. People hear students and just think 20-year-olds, don't they, sometimes? So it's important to point out that it's students from all different age brackets, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Gareth. And the times they are changing. And those old days, if you do an undergraduate, then you do a master's, then you do a PhD, are being replaced by, a demographic, a population of PhD researchers who completely cover that age spectrum. So we've got some PhD researchers who have clearly decided to retire and then do some extra study. And as Sean was highlighting earlier on, nothing beats a bit of lived experience between going out of academia into industry, having a real job, and then going back into academia. So students shouldn't, or prospective students really shouldn't feel as though they're disadvantaged by taking a couple of years out and having to jump. It's much better to identify the opportunity that's right for you and doing that when it is the right opportunity. And that's also, one that's really on our radar at the moment is people taking time out to have a family. So we're not just talking about full-time opportunities here. We're also talking about part-time opportunities. Yeah. And those part-time opportunities can allow people to have a family and bring up a family in parallel to actually doing their research. So there is absolutely no part of that career journey that is closed to a potential PhD student.
Great. Thank you. And Sean, and obviously we've just spoken about you there. Was the plan always to go about the way you've done it, or was it kind of a bit spontaneous? So obviously circumstances dictate, but was that always planned to kind of go into employment and then obviously go on from there?
I mean, yeah, kind of, yeah. I guess so. I come from what you might call a working class background. So, I mean, like, my intention was to get a job because it was like, you need a job to put food on the table, sort of thing. But then I wanted to enter further education. And then so I very much was like, well, I don't know what I want to do right now. Like, I did my undergrad degree in biology and biochemistry and didn't think I was like, oh, being inside, that's not me. I love being outside. I'm an outside guy. And so I went to this tree firm, working outside for 6.5 years, doing tech support, admin, all that stuff, and was like, do you know what? Working outside is not. It's not working outside is not what it's cracked up to be for myself, and I was surprised. And so I went back in. So yeah, like, I guess it was spontaneous, but I was very much leading with my passions, with what I was interested in. For myself, I could see that there was not much point investing a lot of time and money into an opportunity which wasn't right for me. For me, it wasn't. Yeah. So yeah, I was like, I want to know what I'm doing, and I want to know it's right for me. So I went away and did other things, tried out tree research, thought this is really interesting. Maybe still go back to tree research after my PhD. So yeah, very much spontaneous, but yeah. You can lead with what you like, really.
And I think even there, where you seem quite organised and strategically kind of planned it to a certain degree, it's important to point out that circumstances change from when you're in your early 20s to when you go to your 30s and even beyond. So your passion and what you might be interested in might totally change. So it's always important to keep your options open. And if I can come to you at this point, obviously we've heard about kind of application stuff in terms of scholarships and funding. And we also heard about, seeing applications, and Stuart mentioned earlier that you want the application to be, this is the PhD I want to do, rather than just a PhD, quite generically. With the emergence of AI, and the increase in technology now used to do applications and help them with their English language, how important is it that that application isn't taken over by a piece of technology and it still comes from the student themselves expressing their passion? Because that's what you're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, totally, Gareth. Yeah, um, people are more than welcome to use AI with um, applications or in their day-to-day life, but it's important that it's not the bulk of your application. For staff at the university, for supervisors and support staff, we see emails and work from students every single day, so it's quite apparent to staff when AI is being used. It can be from the language used, quirks of AI, the formatting even is often quite a big teller. So yes, yeah, welcome, as you say, to use AI to help with, little language things. But if AI is used heavily, it's quite apparent that it has been used heavily, and I don't think that would have the best impact on the success of an application if that was
Yeah,
obvious.
and for a student that's watching today or on demand and they're going, right, that's for me, I want to do that as we come to the end of our presentation today. How long can they expect a turnaround on a decision? Obviously, there's many students that will want a decision by yesterday, and we all know that doesn't happen. I've been there myself. But what's the rough turnaround times in terms of I apply, I find out X, Y, and Z. That's when I know I've got the role.
Again, like I feel like I've been saying this a lot, but like everything with a PhD, it does vary dramatically. It varies on what the student has applied for. For example, if someone's applied for a competitive doctoral training partnership, there may be a deadline set, and then it could be a month or two before they have an interview. If they're successful, so in that case, it could be quite a long process. But in terms of the training programs, these are often advertised on the main website for that particular program. But if somebody is applying speculatively, we always say it depends on how much work the student has put in up front. If we say we get like a cold application from a student, they haven't been in touch with a supervisor, they may have bits missing from their application. If they apply then, they could be waiting significantly longer than if they'd discussed with a supervisor and the supervisor's aware of an application coming. And then additionally, our PhD applications are all reviewed by academics and all students are interviewed. And just getting the people together for an interview to review the application in the first instance can take some time because academics, like everyone these days, are busy. They're often traveling, field work, staff have annual leave. So it can take time. So if you have been waiting a while, it doesn't mean your application's not been successful. It's often just means that we're very busy. And then again, conversely, I've seen applications that have come through and gone to offer in just a couple of weeks. So unfortunately, I can't give a concrete answer that covers everyone, but it does vary quite a
Yeah,
lot.
and I think that's the takeaway from today as well. Everyone's got their own bespoke circumstances and everyone's got their own passion and what they're educated in. And Stuart, if I can come to you just to wrap up very quickly, one of the things that I took from what you spoke about earlier was the communication, and making sure that students at this level just genuinely are very inquisitive anyway because it's their passion and they want to kind of pick everyone's brains and want to improve their education. How important is it that if they do get stuck, considering how much time and effort it can take up, that they do communicate directly with yourself, with your colleagues, and just make sure that it's right for them? And if they are struggling, there are things in place that can help them.
Yeah, we like to support our students all the way through from sort of pre-application, which is the
Yeah.
sort of initiative like this is all the way through to graduation. So, we have in place a very, very strong support network. And that, as I say, that support network starts with the application process and us getting students to talk to their supervisors or potential supervisors to develop a project. Once students are in place, there is a support network that will allow us to identify when students might be struggling, when they don't necessarily recognize it themselves, and then we can put mitigations in place. So we have both an academic network for support, where through looking at little touch points around progression, we can see whether a student is perhaps not keeping up as well as we may expect for that part in their journey. But also from a personal perspective, there are an awful lot of little roadblocks that can get in the way of a successful PhD. And so what we want to do is make sure that we identify that and support that. So we have a pastoral support network alongside an academic support network. That means we're hopefully giving an environment that allows the student to really succeed and make the most out of that overall PhD experience.
Excellent. Great way to finish on. Thank you. Sean, thank you for giving up your time and talking us through your experience. It's been a pleasure having you and wish you best for the future as well. Be delighted to hear more from you on postgrad.com. Kat, Stuart and Ben, also thank you for your time. It's always great to hear from academics and those from within the recruitment and the coordinators. So thank you very much. If anyone has any questions as we reach, it's almost perfect time and it's almost been exactly an hour, but if anyone does have any questions today and we've not been able to get through to your question perhaps, or if you don't feel like it's been answered and you need to communicate a little bit more, please pop your questions through to webinars@postgradsolutions.com. Alternatively, the team at Aberdeen will be reaching out to you because they'll have all of your details. So please keep an eye out for your emails. Please do respond to them. Please communicate. And please do join them because they're a fantastic university and they're very strong on PhD and research as well. But for now, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from as many of you as possible over the next few months and years. Take care. Wish you the best. Thank you all. Bye-bye.